And today we are delighted to be joined by NBA legend John Stockton. He has a podcast that you can get through a link that Caleb set up, drdrew.com/Stockton. It's called Voices for Medical Freedom. He's concerned about the overreach, particularly of the government, into our healthcare, and it's an interesting topic for sure. He does it with a former NFL offensive player. Dropping suddenly is something that Mr. Stockton and John has been very, very concerned about, and I'd love to hear what his thoughts are on this. Again, if you want to hear more about his podcast, it's drdrew.com/Stockton, STOCKTON. And I'll bring Dr. Kelly Victory in here after a couple of minutes, and we'll be right with it. Let's get to it.
Our laws, as it pertains to substances, are draconian and bizarre. The psychopaths start this way. He was an alcoholic because of social media and pornography, PTSD, love addiction, fentanyl and heroin. Ridiculous. I'm a doctor, for sake. Where the hell do you think I learned that? I'm just saying, you go to treatment before you kill people. I am a clinician. I observe things about these chemicals. Let's just deal with what's real. We used to get these calls on Loveline all the time. Educate adolescents and to prevent and to treat. If you have trouble you can't stop and you want to help stop it, I can help. I got a lot to say. I got a lot more to say.
I think everyone knows the next medical crisis could be just around the corner, whether it comes in the form of another pandemic or something much more routine like a tick bite. You and your family need to be prepared. That's where the Wellness Company comes in. You know the Wellness Company. We have their physicians on, like Dr. McCullough, frequently. The Wellness Company and their doctors are medical professionals you can trust. And their new medical emergency kits are the gold standard when it comes to keeping you safe and healthy.
It's a safety net. It's an insurance policy
absolutely.
that you hope you're not going to
100%.
need, but if you need it, you sure as heck are going to wish you had it if you need it.
Be ready for anything. This medical emergency kit contains an assortment of life-saving medications, including ivermectin, Z-Pak. The medical emergency kit provides a guidebook to aid in the safe use of all these life-saving medications. From anthrax to tick bites to COVID-19, the Wellness Company's medical emergency kit is exactly what you need to have on hand to be prepared. Rest assured, knowing that you have emergency antibiotics, antivirals, and antiparasitics on hand to help you and your family stay safe from whatever life throws at you next. Go to drdrew.com/TWC. That is drdrew.com/TWC to get 10% off today. Just click on that link. And welcome back. As I said, we have the NBA legend John Stockton joining us today. He is, of course, played for the Utah Jazz, a 10-time NBA All-Star, regarded as one of the greatest point guards of all time. John, as I said, has a podcast you can get through to at drdrew.com/Stockton. And he was part of the Dream Team back in the 1992 USA Men's Olympic Basketball Team. So please welcome John Stockton. There you are. John, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure, Drew. Thanks for inviting me.
So tell us how you got into this. I want to hear sort of your story. And I know Dr. Victory has heard it, but most of us may not be aware. So how you became concerned and what you're sort of thinking these days.
Well, it goes way back for me. I mean, when I started playing in the NBA with the Utah Jazz, I came across actually a chiropractor, Craig Bueller, who I resisted. I kind of grew up in the medical world. My mom was a nurse, my sister was a nurse, and I didn't think chiropractors had much to offer, but over time, he really kind of proved. He fixed my sprained ankles, pulled the hamstrings, sniffles, whatever. Always not using drugs. And one of his suggestions was, "Hey, you maybe want to." As we started having children, my wife and I, maybe you want to think about not having vaccines. And I thought he was out of his mind. We continued to follow the schedule until one of our children was sick from the shots and never got unsick. And was awful. And we didn't really tie it to the shots until the 4-year shots, where it was obvious. Shots came, he was sick immediately. Oh, okay, maybe he's onto something. So I was a slow learner. It took me a while, but it took my wife and I a while to do that. And then we paid attention. Then we've been reading and studying since on the topic. And really my biggest regret is that I kicked it down the road for a long time. And I've had friends now that have had children that have had issues, certainly vaccine related. And I didn't say something, 35 years ago when I started learning about it. So that's my story getting to this. And then COVID hits, I felt prepared. I mean, there was nothing about it that was new. Scare the heck out of you. They lie about the results, tell you things have been debunked. the injuries that are caused, and then they take credit for things that don't happen. They say, well, it saved all these lives. It didn't. And there's numerous incidences of that all the way back to polio, which is, I can't think, everybody's gold standard of a vaccine, where everybody thinks that it saved us from polio. And Jonas Salk, who invented it, even said it did. Said it was the end of DDT is what saved us from polio. And this vaccine was introduced after the graph had fallen anyway. So, that's kind of the story of it, and that's what I'm sticking
with. And what is your podcast about now?
Well, it's about medical freedom largely because of COVID and the intrusion on that. We were really into people being able to choose what goes into their own bodies as athletes. That's kind of where it started. Ken's a tremendous athlete, Green Bay Packer, Hall of Famer, offensive lineman, and we think people should have the right to say what goes into our body. Heck, it's our vessel. If you're an athlete, you succeed or fail based on the health of your body, and so giving up that right for any reason is absurd.
Do you think you have any obligation to, let's say there is some ability to protect other people with vaccines or some therapy like that, are you under any obligation to protect others?
I think we're citizens. We all have obligations to our fellow citizen, but does that involve in putting something, first of all, experimental? It doesn't matter whether it is or not, as far as my point of view. I should never have to put something into my body to protect somebody else. This is mine.
Okay.
And nobody has the right to intervene. And I don't know why that's been such a hard thing for people to hold on to.
The hard thing being that you have no obligation to take something for someone else that puts you at risk.
Absolutely. A drug's a great example. I mean, these are chemicals. There's a lot of obligations in a society. You can't cross the yellow line when you're driving. You can't do a lot of things for the protection of others, but your body's your temple, and you get to choose what goes in it or on it, frankly.
And so do you object to all vaccines? Everything?
I'd say, yeah, at this point. I mean, the COVID has peeled the curtain back. And when you start looking at, you take the rose-colored glasses off and you say, okay, which ones have been effective? I think every vaccine, particularly the ones on the schedule, have very questionable safety histories. Whether they've helped or not, I like to use the flu shot as an example. We were told that we should take those when I was playing, that it's going to keep you from getting the flu. You find out that it doesn't. It certainly didn't for me. I ended up spending some time in a Charlotte hospital with, I guess it was the flu, after I'd had the flu shot. And so I don't believe it works. I watched it with my dad. My dad was 85 years old. Everybody insists that you protect old people with the shot. They don't realize there's mercury in that shot. Unless you're pretty crafty about how you get your supply, there's mercury, aluminum, formaldehyde, neomycin. God knows what else is in there. And these are all chemicals that are being put into our body, and they disrupt, if not ruin, our immune system. So, yeah, I think I am against all vaccines. I know I wouldn't take another one.
What, for instance, what about a military recruit or a college student going off to live in dorms where meningococcus circulates around and kills people within a couple of hours? What about and you're 19, what about taking a meningococcal vaccine?
If you take the vaccine and you think it works, good for you. Why does it matter what I do? I have freedom to say what goes into my own body. So they can't tell you it works. It doesn't. They can't tell you it's 100% effective. We went through that whole deal with the mumps vaccine with my daughter in school. So when I said, okay, well, we'll sign a waiver saying you don't have to worry about us, they said, no, you don't understand. You're making other people at risk. I said, why? They had the shot. They're risk-free. So why do they care what I do? But it didn't matter. They said, no, it's only 80% effective. Well, if it's only 80% effective, then why does anybody have to take it? There is no guarantees anyway. So, yeah, I think you get far more injury by introducing chemicals than you ever do protection, by far.
So again, the thought is the sort of herd immunity theory that you get people around the individual mostly vaccinated. You only have to get a certain percentage up to kind of protect each other, and the question then becomes, what's the risk reward, right? Like with everything in medicine, we don't do anything that doesn't have risk. I mean, if you have if you get, you get a sudden appendicitis, let's say, and you need your appendix out, you're going to need some chemicals. You're going to take them. You're going to take some anesthesia. You're going to take some antibiotics. You're going to take maybe some painkillers afterwards, and it's going to save your life. That's worth the risk, right?
Well, I think you get to make that. That's the beauty of America. Well, it's the beauty of the free world. You get to make that choice. You can take the risks. And that came up quite a bit with COVID.
Right. Where do you think the overreach is coming from?
Wow, I wish I was smart enough to know that. I certainly governmental. Our government, the CDC, the FDA, the NIAID, I mean, anything with initials, they've all promised, safe and effective through all this, and they continue to do so in 2023. Even though the evidence is overwhelming, the damage that's being done by these shots, they continue to claim its safety and effectiveness. And the Pfizer report, the one they tried to hide for 75 years, even tells you that 1,200 deaths in the first 3 months.
Would you agree that? Would you agree that overreach is not limited to vaccine therapy? I mean, for instance, doctors are employees now, and they're very much dictated what they can do and can't do, and there are insurance companies that dictate what they can and can't do. There's overreach. There's regulatory agencies that look over the shoulder. Are you concerned about all of those areas?
Absolutely, yeah. Standard of care. Standard care. I mean, listen. A lot of my tremendous friends are doctors, nurses, things. They are handcuffed by the standard of care. If you come in with a sniffle, especially during COVID, there's a standard of care. There's a protocol that they must employ, or they're risking their license, their livelihood, their ability to feed their family. So yeah. Where does that chain end? I don't know, but it's up their ways.
Right. So that's concerning that there's, I like the notion of medical freedom, which is really the name of your podcast, right? Voices for Medical Freedom. Have you interviewed anybody interesting that really caught your attention in the pod?
It's been one of the blessings of my life, frankly, the people that I've had a chance to meet and talk with. So there's been many. We have frontline nurses. We spoke with some frontline nurses who did everything according to the schedule and then started seeing the damage and spoke out. We talked to Naomi Wolf, who went through the Pfizer documents and basically laid out that they knew all this stuff before they ever released it on the public. And so, to me, what kind of evil is that you can know this damage and go ahead and not just put it out there and say, hey, buyer beware. You're putting it out there and saying you have to take this shot, or you can't work, or you can't go to school, or you can't, etc. There's Ed Dowd, who best-selling author. He wrote the book, was it Cause Unknown, where he literally puts the names, faces, death certificates of all these young people who have died following the vaccine. And there's been one after the other. Great people to listen to.
Do you particularly get concerned about the athletes that seem to be having sort of an extraordinary incident of issues for the first time that I'm aware of? At least professional athletes.
Yeah, no more so because they're athletes, but they're such an incredible indicator. So athletes, prime of their life, incredible physical shape. They have people, doctors, weight trainers. They have all these resources at their disposal to be in tip-top shape, and they're dropping dead on the field. I mean, there was up to, I think 3 months ago, I don't know what number it takes for people to find that's enough, but there was 1,100 deaths of athletes. It's like a 27 times any time in history increase since the rollout, and it's definable. They're all vaccinated, and so with that in mind, you have to say, well, at least let's look at it. And why isn't the CDC, the FDA, all the guys with initials, why aren't they all saying, wow, did you say 1,100 deaths since the shots? Why isn't there just a hue and cry out there saying we need to investigate this at minimum? And you're not.
Well, let's do this. I know you and Dr. Victory spoke at a conference together. I'm going to get her in here sooner than later so we can hear about the conference, what you guys did and talked about. So we're going to take a little break here. And as I said before, you can go to John's podcast at drdrew.com/Stockton, STOCKTON, Stockton. And we'll take a little break. Be right back with more John Stockton and bring in Dr. Kelly Victory. Fall is right around the corner, which means dry, flaky red skin from allergy season is coming with it. But the best way to take care of your skin is with our skincare secret, Genucel. You don't need to worry about that puffy, tired eye look or those annoying dark spots or even dry, flaky skin because Genucel Skincare has you covered. Susan and I love our Genucel products so much, we want you to try our personally curated skincare bundles. It's risk-free at Genucel.com/Drew. Genucel works so well, you can see the results in this unplanned live moment on our show when the Redness Repair Cream repaired my skin in just minutes right before your eyes. Their concentrated vitamin C serum helps keep your skin plump and hydrated. Plus, with their immediate effects, you can see astonishing results in under 12 hours. Quick, effective, and easy. Go to Genucel.com/Drew right now to try our bundles and save over 60% today. And remember to enroll in Genucel's world-class concierge program for additional savings and free shipping. Don't wait. It's Genucel.com/Drew, GENUCEL.com/DREW. These products have transformed my life and Susan's and saved our marriage. Discover the key to oral hygiene, regardless of your current daily dental routine. Whether you diligently brush and floss multiple times a day, or you struggle, you got bleeding gums, bad breath, plaque buildup, this revelation is for both of you. Surprisingly, over 350,000 Americans experience health issues that may be connected to their toothbrush or even caused by it, ranging from heart or blood sugar problems, forgetfulness, digestive difficulties, immune issues, all related to oral hygiene. Scientific studies have shown that a simple switch of your toothbrush can lead to a healthier teeth and potentially save your marriage. Yes, save your marriage. Our study, we did a personal study. My wife, Susan, hates the sound of the Sonic toothbrushes, but introducing the Real White Sonic toothbrush, of course, also their hydroxyapatite dirty mouth mineral toothpaste by Primal Life Organics, these products have transformed my life and Susan's and saved our marriage. It's much quieter. It's a very powerful toothbrush, but it is quiet and it saved our marriage. So, the Real White Sonic toothbrush from Primal Life Organics stands out among all other electric toothbrushes I've tried. It effectively eliminates plaque, harmful bacteria, promotes gum health. Get yours and enjoy 60% off at naturaltoothbrush.com/DREW. Some platforms have banned the discussion of controversial topics. If this episode ends here, the rest of the show is available at drdrew.tv.
There's nothing in medicine that doesn't boil down to a risk-benefit calculation. It is the mandate of public health to consider the impact of any particular mitigation scheme on the entire population. This is uncharted territory, Drew.
Welcome, Dr. Kelly Victory.
Hey, John, great to see you again. And thank you for being here. As Drew was just mentioning before the break, you and I just spoke relatively recently at a medical freedom conference up in Spokane, Washington. It came at a time what was not particularly convenient for me. I have a lot of other things going on, but I cannot tell you how glad I was that I went, because it sort of reassured me about the future of medicine and our specialty. To be clear, the people who were there represented, you were one of the only non-medical people. It was nurses, nurse practitioners, pharmacists, physical therapists, and certainly physicians, all of whom have really put a stake in the ground with regard to this concept of medical freedom. Many of them have left their practices or been fired. Many of them have stopped taking medical insurance of all sorts, and they are on a cash-only basis. Many of them have suffered, like I have, the slings and arrows of derision and cancel culture during this process. So I want to get into the weeds with you specifically about the vaccines and your experience with that and what you're seeing in athletes. But before I do, let's really revisit this concept, the sorts of things you were mentioning with regard to the intrusions on medical freedom and why that happened. It certainly long predates COVID. COVID brought it perhaps really fully into the daylight. But this has been a long process that's happened in healthcare. So talk a little bit about that, and then we'll get into the weeds on the vaccines.
Well, I'm certainly no expert on it. I've read a lot, and you go all the way back to early 1900s when every doctor was maybe called a naturopath by today's standards or something like that. They used herbs, they used local remedies, they used whatever, and they'd go visit. And then some wealthy guys, I think it was Carnegie and Rockefeller, wanted to standardize care. It doesn't sound like a terrible idea. If you can get same care in Spokane, Washington that you can get in Florida, that's a pretty good sign if it's good stuff. But what it does is it gets to where there's only one way of looking at things. And that's the medical allopathic way. And that involves drugs every time and surgeries and things that I'd like to avoid. And so, I think there needs to be, and insurance only pays for those. You try to get chiropractic care, naturopathic care, acupuncture care, depending on what your beliefs are, what's worked for you in the past. It's very difficult to have that even playing field where a person can go and look, I want my health, and acupuncture I think will work. Well, too bad, we won't pay for that, but we'll pay the $500 for that drug if you would like. Mm-hmm. So that balance, that playing field's off, and that's back to the standard of care stuff we talked about with Drew.
No, there's no question. And I spoke about that quite a bit, this issue that we have rid the entire profession of healthcare, of medicine, of critical thinking, because it's become entirely algorithmic and based on, drop down boxes. And, the electronic medical record, in my mind, is fundamentally a billing template that captures some incidental pieces of clinical information. It's really all based on what's good for the insurance companies and good for the pharmaceutical companies. With regard to vaccines, I was certainly never an anti-vaxxer. I frankly was very pro-vaccine. I'm one of the most highly vaccinated people I know. But like you, it took me a bit longer. It really wasn't until closer to this COVID that I started to realize that we'd been sold a bill of goods. That a lot of the quote science that we were told was fast, tried and true. I was one of those people, by the way, who would have sworn that the polio vaccine actually saved us from polio. So I wear that, I'm honest about that. I really didn't understand until the last probably 5 years a lot of the junk science. You saw it earlier. Now, fast forward to COVID. Here you are, and it's the first time in my life that we talked about mandating vaccines. Talk a little bit about what you started seeing in the ranks of professional athletes, what their response was. Was it just, are they just, trained to roll up their sleeve or do whatever they're told? Or was there any pushback?
Well, there's certainly pushback, but it was quiet. And if it wasn't quiet, then if a person were to speak out, they'd get lashed out a little bit, or it wouldn't even get out on the mainstream media. Mainstream media has no intention of putting the facts out on this. And so it has to be done through podcasts and things like the Dr. Drew show. So players, and I had to take myself back almost 40 years now and say, what would I have done if I was in this situation? I think You have such faith in your doctors, and you have such faith that they want this team to be successful, and they want you to be successful, that if they say, go ahead and do it, you're kind of going to do it. And I can bear that out because I took the flu shot for my first 5 years. And it takes, for me, you had to beat me over the head with it for a long time. And I had to spend some time in a hospital, like I said, in Charlotte, just to kind of say, well, maybe there's something else to look into. I wasn't saying it was wrong, but it was worth checking into. And then their own, just like the commercials, our own doctors would kind of confirm the suspicion. They said, well, you want to get the shot closer to December in the real flu season because it only lasts for about 30 days. Oh, okay. Well, it only lasts about 30 days. Why am I taking it in September? And, you hear the commercials and they say, well, it's going to impair your ability to fight off infection. Almost every drug, the disclaimer on. If we just listen to these plethora of commercials out there for vaccines and drugs, they'll tell you that they're harmful. They'll tell you that it impacts your immune system and that there's a better way to do it. You just got to listen real closely.
You were a supporter, as I recall, of Kyrie Irving's when he was relatively vocal about saying that he didn't think the vaccine was right for him, and I'm guessing that he never took one, although I don't know if he somehow got pushed into it. What was your experience with Kyrie?
No, I don't know Kyrie. I've never met him. Seen him play, obviously, and I've heard of his comments. I mean, he sat out half the season. maybe more. The NBA technically did not mandate shots. However, they deferred to local authorities. Like if you wanted to join their team and you said, I'm not doing the shot, well, okay, you can't play in LA, you can't play in New York, you can't play in all these municipalities that have said you can't be here without the shots. And so it was kind of a de facto mandate. And you saw with Novak Djokovic. I mean, he's like Muhammad Ali to me right now, where he gave up literally in the prime of his career. He might be the greatest tennis player of all time. And he gave up 2 of his best years because he believes you don't have the right to put what's in my body. And so, these guys are putting their money where their mouths are, and others are more quiet.
No, and as you know, I am a big, I spoke about it at the conference, this issue of, the pillars of medical ethics, the first of which is autonomy, and that the patient always has the sovereign right to make a decision about what he or she puts into their bodies. And so we have jettisoned this concept of medical autonomy, certainly during the COVID era. And I think it's tragic. If you look at let's look at the obvious sort of, died suddenly or drop dead people who are dropping. We had both, Damar Hamlin and Bronny James both have, critical events that were very, very public. Certainly thousands of others did it behind the scenes or not so well publicized. But talk a little bit, I'd said with Bronny James, they came back and said, oh, lo and behold, he's got some previously undiagnosed congenital heart problem. It was my understanding that prior to being, hired on by the league or by a particular team, don't you go through a relatively extensive physical workup before they, let you sign a multi-bazillion-dollar contract?
Well, just to clear things up, when I was starting, they weren't built at multi-gazillion-dollar contracts. But yeah, you do. You go in there, and it is pretty extensive. But it's not nearly extensive enough with the potential for myocarditis, which is one of the things they discovered in the Pfizer report way before they rolled it out. They discovered in the actual tests, which are human tests for us. So they know it exists. There's no dodging. And Dr. McCullough does a great session on that whole thing where you can't argue it. And with that, that's a scarring of the heart, and it's in a hard spot to see. And my understanding is, not being a doctor or a radiologist in any way, but my understanding is the only way you can pick up on that is an MRI. There's another person that claims they do other stuff, but all I've heard is the MRI. So clearly would be missed a lot. And that's the beauty of it. If you're the vaccine companies, the beauty of it is you have plausible deniability. Show me how we did this.
Well, I think, and we know that the FDA mandated that Moderna run a study specifically looking at asymptomatic myocarditis. Myocarditis, inflammation of the heart muscle, when it's symptomatic, we know you have chest pain or shortness of breath, or you develop exercise intolerance. Some clues. But the big concern, and I'm sure, Dr. McCullough talks about this, is the vast number of people who have what we call asymptomatic myocarditis, meaning they have inflammation of the heart muscle, but they don't have any clinical signs of it. So they don't know. And for many of those people, the first symptom is going to be sudden cardiac arrest. Their first symptom is going to be being found dead in bed by their parents in the morning. So Moderna was required to do this study. We know that they have shared the results of the study with the FDA, but the FDA has refused to release the results. And they're saying, if you want to see them, you have to, file a FOIA demand. So there's only one reason. You and I can both guess what the reason is that they are not being willing to release those findings. And then with regard to this myth, and I'm sure you hear it all the time, people will say, oh, athletes have always, had sudden death or died, dropped on the field. It's just we didn't report on it before. And we know that that isn't true based on, a huge study that was done by the International Olympic Committee years ago, way pre-COVID. And prior to the COVID shots, the number of died suddenly was in sort of professional level athletes, Olympic level athletes, was somewhere in the range of 29 per year. And you were rattling off the number. How many? What's your understanding of the current number of athlete deaths so far since the rollout?
Probably 3 or 4 months ago, it was 1,100. And that's, I don't see any need to go back and trace over that and find out. I mean, it's tragedies to each individual family, their wives, their husbands, their whatever. Tragic, but it's how many do we need? So I don't go back and look anymore. Is it now 1,400? Is it 2,000? I don't know, but I think 1,100 is enough.
Yeah. What's your insight into the conversation that goes on in the locker rooms or behind closed doors with athletes? When a Damar Hamlin fundamentally dies on national television, brought back, thankfully, when Ronnie James has whatever his event, what's the conversation in the locker room?
Well, I think it'd be pretty quiet. I don't think guys would want to talk about it out loud. It's, you think about it. If you did do the shots, it's basically Russian roulette. You don't know when it's going to be your turn. I don't know if I took it, if I could ever feel comfortable working out again. Is this the day? Now athletes do a great job of overcoming that, overcoming what happens at their house the day before on the way to the game, whatever. So you can't compartmentalize it and go play your game, and thank goodness. But it's got to be in the back of almost everybody's mind if they've gotten the information. That's a big if, though.
Right. What's, where, I know you've been talking with Dr. McCullough again about this in terms of how the league, whether it's the NBA or the NFL, what their obligation is, what sort of traction, if any, are you getting with the leagues in acknowledging that they potentially were participant in putting previously young, healthy Uber athletes at risk by whether they mandated it or, there's a level of coercion, if not a mandate. There certainly is a level of coercion. Well, what's their, their tolerance for addressing it?
That's a great question. We've had conversations with them. We've had conversations with players associations in many leagues, trying to get them to see the data first, see the anecdotal information, see the common sense. There's a mosaic that you can go through that kind of, proves the dangers of these shots. But, some of them, there was one of the Players Association is on record for receiving money to promote the vaccine. So there's a lot of tentacles involved, and it's hard to say whether they'll bite into it or not. Now, we've offered to try to get that information out, to have personal conversations with the athletes. We'll see how it goes. I don't get to sit in on the meetings when they discuss whether it's going to happen. But one of the things was mentioned was that even though they're not mandating, they're still, for the example, the NBA is still recommending these shots. And I'm saying, well, consider we know that these cause damage by their own admission. So you don't have to be a granola guy to say that, this causes damage. They have their own proof that says it. You're recommending shots for a disease that's extinct, for people that weren't at risk of dying from dying from the disease in the first place. You're recommending that without the protection of the emergency use authorization that the government had in place during the COVID crisis. So my purpose with them is to try to protect them. I want, the league was special to me, and it still is, and I want to stay that way. But I think they're hanging out there a little bit by recommending something that can be harmful.
Yeah, and so I think I was ranting at the end of the show yesterday and said that it's my belief that anyone who is mandating these, whether it's for players or for students to attend your university or for employees, really you are obligated as the employer or the league or the university, I think, to pay for and to oversee whatever workup needs to happen to assure that somebody does not have at a minimum, subclinical myocarditis. In other words, that would mean that everybody would be in line for a cardiac MRI. Have you had that level of granular discussion with the league that, what they might do to screen people?
Not specifically with the league. We've had that discussion. Again, going back to my athletic days, if I had taken the shot and I was there and I had a potential for that, and that one test could prove to be the end of my career if I end up having myocarditis and they said, look, you don't dare play, we can't let you play, I'm not taking the test. It's subjecting yourselves to these tests, which are part of the problem. We had to test for PCR, which we know wasn't an effective test for COVID in the first place. It was 60 to 80% false positives. So, but it was invasive. It's all the way up in your sinuses, almost in your brain. And we acknowledge then that the results of that test are what we live by. I don't think they have the right to test us either. In fact, I know they don't. It's said so in our own laws and in the Nuremberg Code that was put into place after World War II. So it's kind of a mess, Kelly, to be honest.
So you think, wait, you said something that hadn't occurred to me. So you're saying that it's not just whether, even if the league were to say, okay, yes, we'll happily pay for a cardiac MRI, that the players themselves might not want to take it because if it came positive, they might be benched. Is that what you're saying? That the players themselves are reticent to have the test done?
Exactly. Well, I take it back, and here's where my suspicion started. I was in the Olympics, as Drew mentioned, and we get through with the semifinal game, and everybody's kind of celebrating. We're going to go play for the gold medal. Guy taps me on the shoulder and says, we need a urine sample. And I go, okay, it happens. You get urine samples all the time, and you're never worried about it. I don't do drugs. I've never done drugs. So that's a pretty easy call. But then you're sitting in that waiting room waiting to do it, and you say, you know what? All it takes is one false answer, one manipulated test, one anything in that little lab, which I have no control over. These are nameless, faceless people who are all professionals. I'm sure they did great. And my career, my reputation, USA basketball, the Olympic gold medal, everything just evaporates in a blink. And so from that point forward, I've been suspicious of testing. Do I want to volunteer for a test? I don't think so. Not for anything. Because that then gives people power over you and they get to be the judge and the jury and the executioner based on the results of the test. Pretty scary stuff. I know I was scared sitting in that room.
Well, it's terrifying because, John, that's exactly what we are seeing amongst pilots. I have quite a few personal friends who are former fighter pilots, Air Force fighter pilots who now fly commercially, and they have talked about that they don't want to have these tests done because it will end their flying career, potentially. They will never fly again if it's determined that they have subclinical myocarditis or some other vaccine-related problem. They all got vaccinated because they're in the military, and now they're suffering the side effects of that. But it's it's not that the airlines wouldn't give them the test; it's that they don't want to know. I was interested in the league's sort of tolerance for it, because if you look, for example, at how reticent the NFL has been to acknowledge chronic traumatic encephalopathy, head injuries, traumatic head injuries from repeated concussions and those sorts of things. And they don't want to pay out on that. They don't, there's sort of a long history, I think, perhaps of injuries occurring in sports that the leagues have wanted to downplay. And I suspect that, we're going to be paying the price on this COVID shots for a while. This is not going to go away.
Well, we know the military, they're already lightening the standards for military pilots because they've started to fail some of the very tests you talked about. And then you talked about encephalopathy for the football players and concussion protocols, which are now part of everyday life if you have kids playing sports at any level. But one thing they haven't thrown into the equation, and to me, it seems like it's shocking, they haven't included drug use, whether it's painkillers, which are prevalent amongst football players at the time, steroids, growth hormone. I mentioned painkillers. If they participated in what do they call entertainment drugs, whatever. The chemicals also cause encephalopathy, but they ignore that and they call it only concussions. And now because of that, you have new helmets every year with new. I mean, it's just another messy thing, and they refuse to look at the chemical drug implications.
Right.
Refuse.
No, that's an excellent point, Drew. You might want to weigh in on that. The issue of opiate use in professional athletes is it's the quiet secret, and it happens not just in football players and basketball players. It happens in dancers, meaning ballet dancers. Things have a long history of significant narcotic use related to chronic pain.
Well, John mentioned the standard of care, and my hair bristles whenever I hear that word, because standard of care with opiates was give them as much as they want, as long as they want. Pain is whatever the patient says it is. Pain controls what the patient says it is. And when you see the patient, before you check their pulse or blood pressure, check their pain scale. That was a level, and that was the standard of care. It was insanity. And to that issue, while I was sitting here listening to you guys talk, I found myself sort of thinking, what has happened to us? And I know, Kelly, you and I spent a lot of time thinking what has happened to us as a profession, but I'm wondering what John thinks about what has happened to us as a country, because he has, framed this as government overreach, regulatory overreach, sort of maybe employment overreach. Where is this coming from? I don't remember. It seemed to come out of nowhere all of a sudden. This you can't handle the truth, and we know what's good for you. And I guess that was going on. I mean, if you're in the military recruits in the Second World War, you lined up and got your vaccine, you weren't allowed to ask any questions. So we've been through, I guess, things like this before, but this has a wholly different quality to it, where there are self-righteous warriors all around, in the government, outside the government. John, what do you think has happened to us?
Well, I think you can't downplay social media. I saw a show once called Social Dilemma, and the guys didn't take sides in that. They're talking about the algorithms, and they said that they ping you. If you have interest in this, they're going to force you further to that side because they know you're interested, and they're going to keep. And so every day you're looking at your cell phone or your computer, and you're getting the information you want to hear. So it polarizes us, regardless of what side you're on that. So I don't think you can discount that. Maybe we've gotten too soft. We talk about that in the sports world a lot. When I was growing up, I went to college, I got a scholarship, but I had a summer job. I had to go work a summer job. Right now, that'd be abusive to have somebody go work for a summer job, and we got to feed these guys, and so everything's easier, and we got to make it easier. Our kids don't have to work hard. And that's been a long generational process where we don't demand much of our kids anymore. So again, it's deep-seated, Drew. That's what I'm saying, and I don't know if it's answerable today, but we ratted on each other. You think about this whole COVID thing. If you weren't wearing your mask, people would rat on you. Where did that come from? In the old days, the rat. It was, the rat.
The
came
brown shirts.
From. You came from the brown shirts. That's what I was thinking.
The brown shirts.
Yeah.
Well, but and John, I was talking about this at that conference up in Spokane. That there's been a palpable shift from the individual, the things on which this country was predicated, the individual,
right.
Self-reliance, responsibility, autonomy, those things, to everything is the collective. Everything is for the better good. Everything is for the community. And there is no more focus on the individual. And I think it's truly because it's easier to manipulate people if you just, you are now a crowd. You are now, part of the population. There is no individuality. There is no self-reliance. It's a very, very strange thing. And I agree with you also that without social media, none of this could have happened, because social media becomes the cudgel to control people. It is social media that allows you to criticize and destroy somebody's career with the stroke of with a keystroke. It's social media that allows you to, we had a physician up there that Michael Turner, who's going to be on the show with us in a week, whose career was destroyed by the medical board in the state of Washington. They gun for people, and that only is enhanced by social media. So I think that's really a big player. Assuming that COVID is ultimately going to be over, and that we're hearing that COVID vaccine uptake is very, very low. I think Dr. McCullough said yesterday, it's in the single-digit percentage. People just aren't taking it. What's next? What is your focus going forward? Where do you want to take your platform?
Well, medical freedom is really no different than just freedom. And I remember watching shows with my dad, sitting there on the couch. You only had to turn the TV clunker like this. You didn't have remote control and things like that. And we would watch shows, watch a lot of World War II movies, and we would talk about how does that happen in life? How do people do this to people? And sorry, the ring kind of threw me off my game there. I forgot what the question was. You want to start
I was just asking where you were going with your platform. Assuming that that COVID, that we eventually get out of the fog of war that is COVID, and move on. What's whoever it is wants you.
I don't even know that.
But yeah, so I guess I was saying, I agree with you. Medical freedom is freedom. And I think what we're seeing happening in this country, and I've said before, if you wondered what you would have done in Nazi Germany, and how you would have reacted, just look at yourself in the mirror and see how you reacted during COVID, because that'll give you a good insight into what you would have done, during the Second World War in Germany, because the brown shirts and that sort of, turning families against one another, the divisiveness. I'm sure I'm not alone in having lost friends, lifelong friends, over disagreements with regard to how this thing was handled. So where do you you've got an important platform. Where do you want to go with it?
Well, I'd like to try to get more athletes. I mean, for some reason, I joked about this a long time ago, is sometimes people would ask me questions about important subjects that I knew nothing about, and they expect expertise out of you because you can bounce a basketball. And I always thought that was a little odd, but since they're asking, and since that's the way it seems to be, I think the more athletes we could get on board. I mean, I wish more athletes would reach out to us at Voices for Medical Freedom and say, "Hey, John, what do you know? Well, what can we talk about? How can I help?" If we had a big pool of athletes, I think we could stop this in its track, and we could certainly make inroads towards ending future attempts to obstruct our freedom, to be able to demand testing and drugs be injected into our bodies against our will, and just for people to see that you have rights. If your company says you have to have this shot or you can't work, locking arms with the rest of your employees and saying, "No, we're not doing it. Now try to run a business." It's as simple as that. If everybody in the NBA said, "No, we're not doing it," forget whether you think they're good for you or not. That's this whole separate object. If everybody stood up in the NBA and locked arms and said, "I don't think you should have the right to force it on the other guy," even, then this would have never happened. It blew up with sports. It blew up with the NBA, my own Utah Jazz. That's when this all blew up. And then every NC2A, couple leagues in the NC2A, and then the Final Four just canceled. So it was a dominoes with no additional facts to tell you it was scary. They just kind of followed suit. So it could be reversed just as quickly. That's my focus. If we can get athletes, professionals, entertainers, anybody with a voice that wants to speak out and lock arms, I think that's the key, because it's coming again, I think.
No, well, I agree with you. That was Kyrie, or that was
yeah.
Let me say, Drew, that was Kyrie Irving's. His platform was, if we all just said no, we're not playing. No, we're not doing it. You can take a vaccine if you want to, but stand up against the mandate or the coercion. The fear, the fear of reprisal. And that was what he said. You can't run a league if no one's willing to play. And they would have had power in numbers.
Yes, agreed. I mean, same thing with lockdown, same thing with masks, same thing with everything that we sort of went along with. And I think, the early days were a little, memory is a interesting function. I mean, the early days were confusing. I remember thinking, all right, I'm going to support my leaders. They're making tough choices, this kind of stuff. It was the excesses and the persistent. And then people who wanted that to go on was the extraordinary thing to me. So I have found myself recently talking more about it may not be the right term, and it comes up in the context of standing up and saying no. It requires, insight, courage, a certain amount of, desire to fight for freedom. And I think we would kind of call that character, wouldn't we? Have we lost our character in some way, and can we restore our that's maybe character's not even the right word, but can we restore those things that we have often associated with character? Am I on to anything here, John?
I sure think so. I mean, to weigh the risk, Kelly, we talked about early on. What are the risks of all this stuff? What's the risk of defending a fellow employee who doesn't want to do the shot? I mean, there's a risk. If you defend, if you go against your standard of care, there's a risk you'll lose your job, your ability to feed your kids. But is that risk greater than you're putting the person you're injecting at risk of dying, having neurological disorders, having organ failure, having all these things that they know happened again from the Pfizer report? I don't know. I think that is character. And I think you need to be able to stand that. It's not easy.
And I've said many times, and I will say it again, Drew, when you talk about character, I have quoted one of my favorite quotes is John Milton: virtue untested is no virtue at all. If there's no risk to doing what it is you're standing up and doing, then that's not character. That's not virtue. If you're not putting something on the line. And so I would suggest that, yes, we have lost our character. There's a hefty price to be paid, whether you're a professional athlete or a physician or whoever it is standing up and saying, no, I am not willing to do that.
And what you're talking about, and what you're talking about is scapegoating. You're being scapegoated, and that the reason people stick together and go along is they don't want to get scapegoated. And if you don't pick your head up, it's not going to get chopped off. So this scapegoating mechanism, which to me is one of the most atrocious of human impulses, is sort of where character falls flat. I'm sorry, Kelly, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No, so I think there's an issue of character, and as I said, I was so glad that I went to that conference despite the challenges, because I met and was able to talk to people and said, "Wow, these people have tremendous character. These are people who lost jobs, who had families to feed, lots of little kids, and relatively new in their careers, way younger than I am, who said, I'm not doing it. I'm standing up, and I will fight. I was smart enough to go to medical school or to go to nursing school, and I will figure it out, but I'm not doing this." And it was, felt like I was surrounded by people of great character, which was really helpful. Something else I wanted to ask you about, John, was, and only because your co-host is in the NFL, what is your take on Damar Hamlin and why? He stayed very, very quiet after his sudden. I've always guessed quietly that he had 10 or 20 million reasons to stay quiet, offered to him to not speak. What's your take on that?
Well, the guy died. I mean, Hamlin died on the field, essentially. Within minutes, they had that, you guys are doctors, comocordius or something. I mean,
commotio cordis.
Look into, especially in light of the fact of 1,100 deaths by other athletes, wouldn't you at least look into that? Wouldn't you at least say, hey, we're studying all options, but they didn't. They jumped straight to, we've got the answer. They hadn't had any chance to even research him yet. Thankfully, it wasn't an autopsy. But you mentioned back with the character stuff, and you think about where's the character. There's so much character out there, and you saw it at the conference we both attended. Drew, you're doing this every day out here. Tremendous character out there by a lot of people. They don't get a chance to get a platform, or their platform gets slammed, and that, I think, is part of that capture. People don't realize all these advertisements that are on TV. I mean, I watched a thing the other day. I think it was 9 out of 11 ads were for drugs on TV. So if you're that TV station and 90% or there, 85% of your funding comes from pharmaceutical company, you're not going to bite that hand that feeds you. You frankly can't. It's probably in a contract. So the character isn't carrying over to the media very much, but it is out there.
There's no question that these, and I pointed this out when we talked at the conference, to me, another big issue is exactly that, the intrusion of big pharma. The United States is one of only 2 countries in the world that allows pharmaceutical advertising on television, the other one being New Zealand. And as you point out, you cannot trust your media when your media is being entirely bought and paid for by big pharma. Even, it doesn't matter. And this is independent of which station you watch. I don't care if it's Fox News or MSNBC. Roger Ailes, a former head of Fox News, said that he would have loved to have rid Fox News from pharmaceutical advertising, but it was 82% of their advertising dollars came from big pharma. So as you said, the financial implications of trying to disarticulate that relationship, unfortunately, is too overwhelming. And I think that that's also a significant problem.
We talked
Guys,
about
my producer wife here has suggested we take a couple calls here. And those of you who are in the Twitter spaces, if you want to come up, you just raise your hand. The mic is in the lower left hand. You push the button lower left corner. And if I bring you up, then you unmute yourself the same way. And there's Caleb's cartoon up there on how to do so.
Dr. Drew.
John, hey, Josh, hold on one second. John, I'll let you finish your comment. Then we'll have Josh's question.
Well, businesses have their own version of standard of care as well. I remember that from my old business classes in college. And fiduciary responsibility of the CEO and the board of directors to make money for that organization. So theirs isn't an altruistic form either. Theirs is about making money, just like selling the drugs or just like the standard of care. So businesses are the same. It's just a different term.
Yeah.
Josh, go ahead there.
So my question is, you're talking about scapegoating. I want to know how much of this is, and to use John Stockton's point, which is, if I don't want to get a vaccine, that's my business. But if I want to tell other people to not get a vaccine, that can also be problematic. And am I scapegoating the medical profession, or am I scapegoating the government? I mean, scapegoating goes everywhere that it can go. It's gonna touch everything. So
you're
the question
right.
The
one thing I would say is that you have to be sort of specific about what we're talking about. And scapegoating is ultimately a desire to kill. That's ultimately what it is. That's where it originates, in elevating a leader and then killing that leader. And again, the French Revolution was the ultimate expression of that kind of scapegoating. There are more obviously sort of subtle kinds of scapegoating mechanisms out there that don't involve murderous rage. But once there is murderous rage, it goes to try to destroy. And that's why the whole cancellation phenomenon has been so dangerous. It has harmed people. It's ruined their ability to make a living. And yes, you could say that people do some scapegoating of, if they gather together and point at something else that's causing their problems, that has a scapegoating quality to it. Or it's just reality. Or it's just they're describing what's really happening.
Could I add to that, Drew?
John?
Your hairdresser didn't mandate shots. Your hairdresser didn't apply shots. Your hairdresser didn't have the standard of care. I mean, they've earned our distrust with their behavior, with their mandates. So no, I don't think it's an artificial scapegoating. They've earned it. And now it's just trying to find, with all the quality people with character, try to find the right ones that are still in the field, that rather than abandoning the system, find the right government officials that are doing it right and the right medical people who are doing it right. And let's start elevating them or giving them a chance to be heard.
Well, there really is a medical freedom movement out there. I keep running around people that are trying to create systems to help deliver medicine and reestablish the patient-doctor relationship and reestablish trust in the system. It's coming. There are, like you said, courageous people out there, independent-minded people. I worry that somebody's going to get in the way of that. You know what I mean? Because there's such an aggressive impulse on one side of the equation here. Christina, I've asked you to come on up here, so go ahead, Joe. You just unmute yourself. There you are. What's up?
Hi. Wow, this is exciting. Okay. I have a 4-year-old who is due for preschool kindergarten shots soon, and I am trying to figure out how to decide if he should even get his regular vaccines, or if I should do an alternate schedule, or what I should do. How can I find information to help me make those decisions.
What is your? That's really the patient doctor unit that should be doing that. Is your doctor not available to discuss this?
I don't know if I can trust him anymore or not. That's the other thing.
Yeah. Well, and I understand, Christina,
before everybody jumps on him, hold on. I would give him a chance. I would just say give him a chance, or her a chance, whoever it is. But go ahead, Kelly. Go ahead.
Well, what I was going to say is I understand exactly. I don't have children, but I understand the position you're in, Christina, because I agree. I think most pediatricians, because 80% of all physicians are employees, either of a large medical group or of a hospital system or of an insurance company, they are following a protocol. And right now, the pediatric schedule is very clear. So I think, to Drew's point, yes, I think you should ask your physician, your pediatrician, what are my options? What are my options if I choose not to follow the pediatric schedule? And see what your physician's answer is. If their answer is, hair on fire, oh my God, why in the world would you not, buy into this? Then maybe it's time to source a different physician, because they should be willing. Informed consent, Christina, means giving you both ends of the spectrum. Here's what would happen if you did nothing. And here's what is likely or potentially could happen if you follow the schedule. True informed consent. And your average physician doesn't know how to give informed consent any longer, but they need to be giving you
doesn't have time.
all of the options. Well, you know what? Bad on them then. So I would ask the question, but you deserve full informed consent, which means to understand what would happen if you made a different choice other than what's being recommended.
I'll chime in there too. That's not the end of it there. It's the schools. The schools have suddenly feel like judge and jury in this as well. You should be required a philosophical objection, a medical exemption, I guess, not exception, exemption, or a religious. And nobody should ever be able to judge your religious fervor, period. So that should be a no-brainer. If you have questions about it and you want to even think about it for a year, you should be able to employ any one of those exemptions and get it passed. If not, then the exemptions aren't worth it, and it's back to being a mandate.
I agree. And one of the problems, John, as you know, is getting when these shots get on the childhood schedule, when the CDC adds it to the childhood schedule, your average school system is going to end up using that schedule to guide them and say, well, if it's on the childhood schedule for the CDC, then that's what we're going to follow, even though it's not the CDC is not a regulatory body. They are an advisory body. But let's face it, the school systems, Drew, you know it as well as I do, the school system uses that childhood vaccine schedule to make their decisions.
What? Kelly, they don't mandate anything. How dare you? They don't mandate. The CDC doesn't mandate anything. That's the part that the operational part of this is the insidious part. So we have somebody up here. Let me try to get the name. It's Outbreak. Team Bonk. You should be able to speak now if you unmute yourself. There you are.
Hey, Dr. Drew, I just John Stockton, I heard you had a really low resting heartbeat, and I was wondering if that piqued your interest in this myocarditis of the COVID stuff.
Not extra.
Sure what he's asking?
Yeah, I mean, I did have a low resting heart rate my whole career. I always like to think it's because I was in good shape and was ready to handle those loads. I mean, that was one of the things I focused on. But the whole COVID thing didn't exaggerate that thinking, nor did my low resting heart rate exaggerate the COVID experience.
Well, I will tell you a personal story I had when I got Alpha or Delta in that fall Christmas period. Was it 2021, that window? And Dr. McCullough said something yesterday about COVID not causing myocarditis, the illness not causing myocarditis. Right. And I'm not quite sure what he meant by that, because when I had COVID, I had a fever of 102, my heart rate was 60. And I remember walking upstairs with a fever of 102 with my heart rate in 60, and I just thought, oh, this is infecting my heart. There's no doubt about it. This is having some really significant effect on whether it's just the conduction system or whatever. It's affecting the heart for sure. That's not that fever heart rate dissociation is not normal. And there are viral illnesses that do that. I mean, there's classic illnesses that do that. Let's face it, that don't cause myocarditis, by the way. So it affects the heart. Let's be clear. The concern, and again, based on that circulation article that came out in July, I just found it a couple weeks ago, is that the long-term effects of the vaccine seem to be more persistent. Now that's the data that's starting to come out, and I have a feeling that one of the pertinent to the topic we're talking about schools mandating vaccines. I think schools are going to get sued if kids have long-term consequences from having required to take a vaccine to go to school, whether it's college or whatever, whoever did it. It was only one bioethicist, Aaron Cariotti, who stood up and said, we don't have the data. You can't do this. You don't have the bioethical standing to mandate this. And he was right. And now he is involved in a lawsuit against the federal government in Biden versus Missouri and winning dramatically. So keep an eye on all of that. That's how this all gets played out. Guys, the clock is running out on us. John, thank you for joining us. Kelly, any last comments?
No, just thank you again, John, for taking the time to do this. It was such a pleasure to meet you in Spokane, and I thought your comments up there and again here today were spot on. I agree with you. Medical freedom is just one small snippet of our overall freedom, and my concern about COVID is absolutely zero. My concern about losing my civil liberties is very high, and I think that's what you're fighting for as well. So I appreciate you using your platform and for being here today. And employing the athletes. I think that's a brilliant way to go at this. If you can corral the support of multiple professional athletes, I think it would be spectacular.
Agreed. Well, Drew, I've enjoyed your show. I've watched it a bunch, so thank you for having me on. Kelly, before I let you go, I thought your presentation was outstanding. It was funny. It was factual. It was perfect. So if somebody's looking for a speaker,
I want to hear that.
Dr. Kelly Vickery is special.
Kelly's the best.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that.
Plan.
It was fun. I'll tell you. Okay. Thank you, John.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. You need to come to the RFK thing.
We're not in charge of that, but once I've got some attention
All
from
right.
people, we'll see what we can do.
Well, thanks for the plug,
but John, thanks so much.
It.
You bet. drdrew.com/Stockton to hear the podcast. And we will let you go, John and Kelly, for you and I. I'm sure Caleb's going to throw up an upcoming schedule here for us.
Next Wednesday. I think we have my
Wednesday,
Michael Turner is here next Wednesday.
Correct.
Yeah, there we go.
And Scott Adams on Tuesday and Carrie Lake on Thursday. And then Nation Baby. There's the baby picture. So our whole system grinds to a halt when a baby is born because Mr. Caleb Nation.
Somebody saw the ultrasound and asked me if I was pregnant.
Yeah.
I throw up this warning.
Fertility age. So am I.
I throw this up to warn people that, if all of a sudden the baby decides to come early, we're not bumping Carrie Lake or Scott Adams or Michael Turner. It's like suddenly baby just decided, and baby gets top priority. So if it gets, we move those shows. That's why.
There you go.
So fun.
All right.
Well, everyone have a nice weekend. We got to rush to the airport. That's why I had to watch the clock a little bit. I would have taken a couple more calls with you guys, but we are on our. Oh, I thought we're leaving at 5. You're leaving at 6? No. Oh no! No, you're not.
Time for somebody to
you're
check.
You're leaving at 6. You're not making your flight. You better check that. But I'll take some more calls if I don't know how we're going to get there. I'll be fine. You're going to be in trouble. But.
All right. Well, I'm jumping to the
I'll
next
let you go,
thing.
Kelly. Okay.
Oh, all right. See you soon. Safe travels.
All right. Thank you so much. And I guess I'm going to go on. Can I get on the stream? Here we are. I'll get back on the stream. You have to ask me again, Caleb, to be a co-host if you don't mind. Oh, there we go. And I will go back to the calls if you want.
I'll get you. I'll get
gotta,
you go in. I'll just bring up the first caller that's here, and while I get you loaded back in.
Okay, that's the 79P.
You got invited to the Steve Kirsch fundraiser.
Yeah, we're going to go to a fundraiser for RFK Jr. with a old friend of this show, Steve Kirsch, is putting on after the event on October 28th at the San Jose Convention Center. I'm not sure where it is. It's a convention center. He's busy getting me reconnected to the Twitter Spaces. But he will put up the poster for you. And I was just thinking, I got to talk to them because it really would be interesting to get a few other speakers in there that we might want to hear from. It'd be very interesting. So in any event, staying tight here, the 79 Pro, go ahead. '79 Pro. You have to unmute yourself, 79 Pro. Caleb, that's not true. He just texted me and asked me to promote it.
Oh, okay. Okay, good.
Let's make a big deal.
I saw there was some reporter was leaking details about it a few days ago, but now I guess it's public. So I was worried that we weren't going to be part of the leak.
I think that was to add a little intrigue to the whole thing. Okay, I'm going to have to try. Am I yet a co-host here? No, I'm not. 79P, you are up as a speaker. You just go to the left-hand corner, you unmute your mic, and you can. There you are. Now go ahead.
Yeah, how you doing? Can you hear me?
Hello?
I do. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry about that. My vote was okay. So thanks for having me on. I have a question. I am a vaccine-injured patient here for a couple years from the COVID-19 vaccine. And my question is in regards to getting a tetanus shot, because it's been 10 years since I've gotten one. And I've heard that once you become vaccine injured, you could be more susceptible to getting injured again, regardless of what the vaccine is. And I have talked to my doctor about that, but...
Yeah. What did he say or she say?
Well, they basically just said, well, you're due for a shot. So no real feedback. And I just,
the tetanus shot is it's so vastly different from the COVID vaccine. I can't even imagine a mechanism where you would get worse. And so I'd say just, if you were my patient, I'd say, look, are you comfortable getting it? You trust your instincts. I don't see how it could possibly make things worse. It's so vastly different from the whole function of what's going on in long vaccine that I wouldn't worry about it so much. But by the same token, you could always wait until you get a laceration and then take the vaccine at that time when it's really worth the risk. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. The only thing that I was told by someone else, but I do appreciate your feedback, is because of my injury, my immune system is hyperactive and, it could react to any type of...
It's not that... Yeah, but it's not that simple, because that's like saying, next time I get a sinus infection, my long COVID is going to get worse. No, not necessarily. Or next time I get a dental, I get a caries that gets inflamed, that's going to make no, it doesn't really work. This is a much more narrow issue in terms of what's going on in the long COVID syndrome. But how is it manifesting for you?
Well, my injury had to do with, pretty bad digestive issues, inflamed digestive tract. I definitely got the POTS. I had some neurological issues, muscle twitching, things like that. And just brain fog, lost 20 pounds, still haven't gotten it back. So yeah, it's been
Have you tried any of the ideas, the treatments that people are thinking about?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen some, like Dr. Pierre Corey's, I've been a patient of his clinic. I've done some of the, naturopath remedies, like maybe going on the GAPS protocol for my digestive issues, and just, intermittent fasting, a lot of the less, they're doing different
medical stuff.
Yeah, nutrition.
Well, I will just tell you, fluvoxamine worked like crazy for my long COVID. I've got a friend we interviewed on this show who has severe long COVID. Ritalin has helped for him. Dr. Patterson and Dr. Yogender are trying all kinds of things. They're using actually statins and things with good results. So there's all kinds of ideas out there about what to do. I would not give up. You should be able to find something that is helpful. And don't, I mean, you're fighting you're fighting an illness, and you kind of often need pharmacology to do that. That is the thing that people don't quite get. You're fighting a biology, you're trying to push back a biology that it's not already not natural. Brain bee. Brain bell.
Hello?
Hey there, go ahead.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Can you hear me?
I do.
Great. I dropped by because I noticed the title of this space here, Athletes Dropping Suddenly, John Stockton. And
that's his contention, yes.
Well, it's not only his contention, but there's a lot of other people in AV land that contend the same thing, most notably Peter McCullough, Edward Dowd, Epic Times, Pierre Corey, and I mean, I just find it hard to believe that supposedly intelligent people can't see through this.
What is this?
The source of these thousands of athletes dying. It's an anonymous blog called Good Sciencing.
Okay.
Basically, they list anybody who's ever performed any sport or activity at any time in their life as an athlete. So they'll include 60-year-olds, 70-year-olds, 80-year-olds who haven't performed competitively for decades. And it's amazing to me that people are falling for this.
So where is Ed Dowd getting his data from? Do you know?
When he said, well, he's got two different sets of data, right? He talks about the increased mortality, which I don't bother with because I haven't looked into that. But he also goes on to claim about athlete deaths, and one of his favorite catchphrases is, "It used to be 29 a year, and now it's 29 a month." Have you heard that?
Mm-hmm. I've heard that said. I don't remember if it was from him or not. Yep.
And his source for the athletes is Good Sciencing.
Oh, that's interesting. So I thought he was getting his data from actuarial professionals.
No,
that's what he told me.
There are no actuarial professionals that I'm aware of that keep track of athletes' deaths.
Oh, there must be. They've got to be insured up the wazoo.
Well, here's what I know. I know Ed Dowd's book cites the Good Sciencing webpage. It's a blog, really.
Interesting.
For his interest, for his information. Peter McCullough is
who does the Good Sciencing? Who is that does that webpage?
It's anonymously run. They claim to be a bunch of. They claim to be a team of investigators, journalists, news editors, and truth seekers. And if you take a close look at it, and I've written threads on this stuff, you can go through my timeline and check out some of my threads or even any of my replies. I'm a little obsessive about this, and I focus almost exclusively on this piece of garbage data. And
how did you get into this?
How did I get into this? When Good Sciencing first launched, in November 2021, I just started taking a look at it. It seemed incredible to me, right? It seemed outlandish to me that so many of these
many people were. Yeah, right.
And once I started looking into some of their claims, some of their listings, what they do is they scrape websites across the globe looking for dead people. And if they can link them to some sort of sport or activity, for instance, an engineer who had a heart attack at a gym, he's considered an athlete. An advertising executive who had an incident at a gym, that's another athlete. A girl who died in a pool from an epileptic seizure is considered a swimmer at Good Sciencing. They're very clever. They even have 100, more than 100 now, unnamed people who they call athletes who are killed by vaccines, including a 57-year-old guy who also happened to die in a swimming pool. He's a swimmer, although they have no idea who he even is.
Okay. So where would you go to get decent data? Where do you go?
I spend my lunch hours Googling their entries and looking for the causes of death that get announced.
No. I mean, where can we get data you would rely on?
Where we could get, well, there's NCC SIR. They've been tracking athlete deaths. They've been tracking athlete deaths in the United States since 1982. And they're on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
But it's easy to take a close look at the Good Sciencing entries. And again, you can go through my timeline, go through my replies, and you can see all the examples I provide. And I even went so far as to download the entire Good Sciencing list for 2022. And I plucked out all of the people that shouldn't be on that list, and I ended up with about as many cardiac deaths in young athletes as has historically been recorded.
Which is, what's the number?
The number I came up with for 2022 is 44. Now that's actually going to be overcounting because I left in all unknowns and unreported and probably some other ones that shouldn't be in there. But I wanted to err on the side of caution. So my number was 44. As a baseline, I used the 2020 Peterson study, which looked at athlete deaths, strictly looking at sudden cardiac athlete deaths from 2014 to 2018. They found 173 over those 4 years.
From 17 to when? To 20?
14 to 18.
Say it again, from when to when? 14 to 18. So all pre-COVID era stuff.
And it was released, I believe the study was published first in late 2020. Good Sciencing, on the other hand, just scrapes websites looking for people they can add to their list. If they're a gym, if they go to a gym, they're a gymnast. If they die in a pool,
no, I understand. You've made your point. I get your point. I'm trying to get some decent data here. Yeah, you're a weightlifter.
Do you have any clues or indications about who started or is running the site? I think finding out who runs this site is pretty key to this. I actually been digging about it while you've been talking.
There is actually one person on Twitter, and I found them months and months and months ago, and I have them bookmarked somewhere, but I don't remember their username. And they said something to the effect that led me to believe that they were involved with the site, something like contact us or with info or something along those lines. But off the top of my head, I forget who they were.
So we need, I'm seeing here the National Center for Catastrophic Sports Injury Research putting the number that they had at, where is it? 21 athletes dying in 20 to 21. It'd be really interesting to know what the data is now. So 20 to 21, the number, 20 to 21, the number is 21. You have any idea what it is now?
Their 2022 all sport report should be out shortly. I just contacted them not too long ago, and they said it would be out in the same group? October. I'm sorry?
Is that the same group? National Center for Catastrophic Sports Injury?
Yeah. Yes.
Different group. Yeah. Same group. All right. Well, thank you. I'll keep an eye on all that. I never heard of, what do you call it? Good science? Good sciencing?
Good sciencing. I mean, if you read it, it reads like it's written by a bunch of ninth graders. And if you look at it with a critical eye, it starts falling apart very quickly.
Interesting.
But people seem to just read the headlines and follow the headlines. And
don't believe everything you read.
Yeah, I mean, look, and let's say let's say there are some excess deaths. Let's just posit it. Is it COVID? Is it COVID vaccine plus vaccine? Is it just the vaccine? Who the hell? How do you sort all that out? That's the thing I've been saying all along.
Yeah, but it seems like it's people who are really active, like, fighter pilots and, and athletes and
there
people with high stress jobs, comics.
Well, she didn't die. She had
yeah,
thoughts.
But Bob did.
Bob hit his head, as did Heather, right? And so it's not a cardiac.
But they had because of the myocarditis, right? Or the POTS.
POTS syndrome, yeah. All right, my friend.
But still, it just seems like it's people that are not like sitting on their couch all day,
Well, that's just the way hearts are. That's the way cardiac, minor cardiac
and the younger males,
minor cardiac pathology can become major cardiac pathology if you're not careful. If you're stressing, even that's why, by the way, we always tell you that people die overnight because there's a surge of adrenaline at night too that can bring out these weaknesses and cause a rhythm disturbance. What's that, Caleb?
Yes, yeah. It's so odd to me whenever I can't find like the source of who's writing these articles, and it almost makes me think that a lot of it, like what he was saying, is being scraped just to get all of these articles into the Google search results. They're trying to make money in that way somehow. But it's also, I would hope to think that this isn't the sole source of information for these reports. Like he was saying that this was a primary source for Ed Dowd, but Ed Dowd was showing us all of the charts and the data. So he showed us all of that stuff on here. So it's not like he's just only relying on goodsciencing.com. I've never even heard of this site, and we've had hundreds of guests on the show. None of them have ever referred to this.
I haven't either. I thought he said he was getting it from actuarial data.
That's what he said.
Team who was,
right. That's what Ed said.
Whatever. It's all. This is the process.
Well, we're gonna have Ed back, and we'll ask him.
All right. This is the process. This is the back and forth.
I love him.
Welcome to come up and
okay.
raise these issues.
Emily, book Ed.
What? Oh,
Emily, book Ed.
Okay. All right. Thank you for your calls, everybody. We have to run now. We do have to get going.
Well, I've got to tear down all this equipment, and you have to
correct.
do an ad for V-Shreds.
Okay,
so.
All right. Thank you all for being here. Thank you to John Stockton. Thank you to Kelly Victory. Scott Adams in here next Tuesday should be very interesting.
Yay.
He's been he used to make, I'm going to present him with this fact. I used to listen to him because he made me feel better. He made me understand what was Trump up to. He helped me calm down about some of his shenanigans. Now Scott's making me upset again. We're talking about why and what he's doing.
These are dark, dark times, Drew.
It appears to be. But all right, listen, thank you so much for being here. We will see you on Tuesday at 3:00. Ask Dr. Drew is produced by Caleb Nation and Susan Pinsky. As a reminder, the discussions here are not a substitute for medical care, diagnosis, or treatment. This show is intended for educational and informational purposes only. I am a licensed physician, but I am not a replacement for your personal doctor, and I am not practicing medicine here. Always remember that our understanding of medicine and science is constantly evolving. Though my opinion is based on the information that is available to me today, some of the contents of this show could be outdated in the future. Be sure to check with trusted resources in case any of the information has been updated since this was published. If you or someone you know is in immediate danger, don't call me, call 911. If you're feeling hopeless or suicidal, call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 800-273-8255. You can find more of my recommended organizations and helpful resources at drdrew.com/help.
I remember like the first window to my addiction opening was when, my grandfather would be in the bar all day and everybody would be smoking. And I always wanted to try a cigarette. And my mom, because I had asthma, my mom told me, if you ever try a cigarette, you'll die. So I remember being, whatever I was, 11, 12. And I remember the first time where I was like, I'm going to risk my life. Like I'm going to probably die right now. Like my friends are smoking like Marlboro Reds. And I took a pull of a cigarette. I got lightheaded and I didn't die. And I was like, instantly it was like, what else are they lying about? And it was like, let's go. Like make the calls. Like
that is why you don't lie to your kids.
Yes.
Interesting.
How do you feel about Santa?
You can tell them fibs and stories, but when they ask a question, you gotta tell them.
I like that. I'm anti-Santa.